Kevin gets called out for cutting in line, tried to pull a racial. I decided to take a trip to a discount store because I needed to buy toothpaste. Everything seemed calm when I arrived, but as I approached the checkout counters, I saw an endless line. It wasn't my lucky day, but I wasn't in a hurry either, so I took a deep breath, grabbed what I needed, and joined the line like everyone else. After waiting for a while, just as I was getting used to the slow pace of the line, I noticed a father and his daughter behind me. Judging by their appearance and the way they spoke, they seemed to be of Middle Eastern origin. The little girl, who was about 8 or 9 years old, curiously looked at the items on the shelves while her father remained calm, waiting for his turn like everyone else. We were almost at the front, ready to pay, when suddenly an older man appeared out of nowhere. He had that look on his face that screamed, "I'm in charge here," and it was obvious he thought he had more rights than anyone else. Without asking for permission, this man, who I was already starting to label as a Kevin, cut in line right in front of the father and his daughter, as if the rules didn't apply to him. The father, who had been waiting patiently, reacted immediately. With a lot of calmness but firmness, he told the man that he needed to respect the line and go to the back like everyone else. There was nothing aggressive in his tone, just a fair demand. But Kevin didn't take it well at all. His face turned red with anger, and he began hurling insults at the father. What left me speechless was that he not only insulted the father, but also had the audacity to direct his words at the little girl, who had done absolutely nothing. The tension in the line was palpable. Everyone there watched, waiting for the man to come to his senses and apologize. But Kevin, as if his behavior wasn't already low enough, decided to take things further. Without being provoked, he spat out a phrase full of racism and disdain. "Why don't you go back to your country?" The air froze for a moment. He had gone from being an annoying guy to a full-blown bigot. At that moment, I couldn't stay silent, and luckily, neither could the others. Several people in the line began yelling at him, demanding that he leave. A kind of unity formed among strangers, all defending the father and his daughter. It was one of those moments when you realize there are still people who won't tolerate hate or racism, and that gave me a bit of hope. The cashier, who had been watching the whole situation, finally stepped in. With a lot of authority, he told the man to leave the store immediately. Kevin didn't take it gracefully. Instead of accepting his defeat with dignity, he began throwing more insults as he left. His words were venomous, but at least he left. When things calmed down, I approached the father and asked if he and his daughter were okay. Though visibly upset, the man assured me they were fine and thanked everyone who had spoken up in their defense. The little girl seemed a bit confused, but her father reassured her with gentle words. It was a sad and frustrating moment, but also one filled with solidarity. I finished my shopping, left the store, and as I walked to my car, I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. I wondered how many times people like Kevin had gotten away with their behavior simply because no one dared to confront them. Lesson of the day: respect the rules and respect people. We're all here trying to live our lives as best as we can. If someone calls you out for your behavior, the least you can do is reflect on it instead of responding with hate. There's never an excuse for racism. Never. Update 1.
Hello, everyone.
After everything that happened, I felt that I couldn't just move on without doing something about it. So yesterday, I decided to go back to the store and speak with the manager. When I arrived, I asked for a few minutes of his time to share what had happened the day before, and also to thank him for how the cashier handled the situation. The manager, whose name is Jorge, listened to me very attentively. At first, he seemed a little concerned, probably thinking I was there to file a complaint. But when I explained that my purpose was to commend the cashier for his professionalism, his expression completely changed. Jorge thanked me for taking the time to return and share my experience. He mentioned that not all customers do that and that, unfortunately, employees often receive more criticism than praise. He assured me that he would speak with the team to recognize the cashier for his intervention and also to reinforce employee training for similar situations. According to him, it's essential that everyone in the store feels supported to act fairly and respectfully when facing conflicts like this. Something that caught my attention was that Jorge told me it wasn't the first time they had dealt with someone like Kevin. He said that while most customers are respectful, there are always a few who think the rules don't apply to them. He commented that in his experience, many of these incidents can escalate quickly if not handled properly, which is why it's crucial for employees to know how to respond. As we talked, an idea came to mind. What if the store implemented a more structured program to train its staff on conflict resolution and handling difficult situations? When I mentioned this to Jorge, he seemed interested and said he would consider it. I don't know if they'll actually follow through with something like this, but at least I planted the seed of the idea. Before I left, I asked if he could pass along a message to the cashier, who unfortunately wasn't working at the time. Jorge promised to let him know that his actions were recognized not just by me, but also by other customers who were in line that day. It felt good to know that this small gesture might make someone feel valued in their work. I left the store feeling a bit calmer, though I still had a knot in my stomach over what I had witnessed. There's something about these kinds of confrontations that stays with you for days. I wondered how many people like Kevin exist and how many times they've gotten away with their behavior simply because no one dared to confront them. On the other hand, I couldn't stop thinking about the father and his daughter. I sincerely hope that little girl doesn't carry that memory with her as something permanent, though I know Kevin's words were strong enough to leave a mark. It comforts me to know that, at the very least, many people in line, including myself, showed solidarity and support for them in that moment. In the end, this experience taught me several things. First, that there's always room for us to be better, even in the smallest interactions of daily life. And second, that our words and actions, no matter how small they may seem, can make a big difference. In this case, a simple intervention by the cashier and the support of others in line turned a toxic situation into a display of humanity and empathy. I hope that stories like this remind us that we can all contribute to creating a more respectful and kind environment, whether it's in a store, on the street, or anywhere else. And if you ever encounter a Kevin, don't be afraid to speak up. It's not about seeking confrontation, but about standing up for what's right. Update to hello again. Today I want to share something that happened to me a few days ago, and honestly, it moved me more than I expected. It all began on a quiet afternoon as I walked through the park near my house. I was trying to clear my mind after a somewhat heavy week, not thinking much about what had happened in the store. As I strolled, I noticed a little girl playing on a swing and a man sitting nearby, watching her with a calm smile. At first, I didn't recognize them, but as I got closer, I realized they were the father and daughter who had been behind me in line that day. I won't lie. I hesitated for a moment about whether I should approach them or not. I didn't want to seem invasive or make them uncomfortable, but in the end, I decided to say hello. I walked up with a smile, and to my surprise, the father immediately recognized me too. He stood up, shook my hand, and thanked me again for what had happened in the store. We sat down on a nearby bench and began to chat. He told me that after the incident, both he and his daughter had been deeply moved by the support they received from the other customers in the store. Although the experience had been unpleasant, especially due to Kevin's racist comments, it had also shown the best of people: solidarity, empathy, and respect. As we talked, the father, whose name is Omar, shared a bit of his story. He told me that he had come to the country several years ago looking for a better life for his family. His daughter, whose name is Layla, was born here, and despite the challenges they face as immigrants, they have always tried to adapt and contribute to their community. However, this was not the first incident of discrimination they had faced, and it probably wouldn't be the last. What impacted me the most was when Omar told me that, although he was used to dealing with these kinds of situations, what really hurt him was that his daughter had to witness something so ugly. He confessed that he was worried about how these experiences might affect the way Layla sees the world and the people around her. While Layla continued playing on the swings, Omar told me that very night he had a conversation with her about what had happened. He explained to her that while there are people like Kevin in the world, there are also many more who are willing to stand up for what is right, like the customers in the store. He said Layla seemed to understand, though she was still very young to process it all. I asked him how he felt now, several days after the incident. He told me that, although he still felt some frustration about what had happened, he also felt grateful for the solidarity of strangers. He said something that really struck me. What you all did that day, even if it seems small, had a huge impact. You didn't just defend me, you defended my daughter. And that is priceless. As we were talking, Layla came over to us and smiled at me. She asked if I was the man from the store who had been in the line. I laughed and told her yes. Then she thanked me with the innocence typical of a child. And that moment made me realize how important it was for her to see that there are people willing to defend her. When we said goodbye, Omar gave me his phone number and told me that if I ever needed anything, I shouldn't hesitate to call him. It was a small gesture, but full of meaning. I left the park with a mix of emotions, sadness for what they had gone through, but also hope in seeing how a community can come together in the face of injustice. Update 3. A week after sharing what happened that day in the store, I find myself overwhelmed by the number of responses, support, and messages I've received. Not only have people read my story, but many of you shared your own experiences, both good and bad, involving similar situations. Each comment, message, and story has left a mark on me, and today I want to take the time to reflect and share what I've learned from this wave of solidarity. In the days following my post, I received dozens of direct messages and comments from people narrating their encounters with individuals like Kevin. Those uncomfortable moments where someone decides to ignore the basic rules of civility and respect. From stories about lines in supermarkets to incidents on public transportation, it seemed like everyone had something to share. Some were examples of small acts of bravery, like standing up for someone vulnerable. Others were tales of frustration, where no one dared to speak up. What impacted me most about these stories was realizing that while these types of situations aren't rare, the response we get often depends on how we react as a community. Many of the people who wrote to me said that my story had inspired them to be firmer and braver the next time they faced something similar. And for me, that alone is already a significant change. One of the stories that stuck with me the most was from a woman named Sophia. She wrote to tell me that some time ago, she found herself in a similar situation at a park with her young son. A man started yelling derogatory comments at her simply because her son was playing in an area that, according to him, wasn't for them. Sophia told me that at that moment, no one stepped in, and she felt completely alone. She confessed that reading my story and seeing how so many people came together to support the father and his daughter in the store gave her some hope back. Another message that moved me was from a young man named Martin, who works as a cashier at a store. He told me that his job often involves dealing with difficult customers, but he rarely receives support from other customers or even his superiors. Martin thanked me for going back to the store to speak with the manager and recognize the work of the cashier who stepped in that day. He said, "Sometimes we just need someone to tell us that what we did was right to feel valued." These stories made me reflect on something important. At some point, all of us have the opportunity to make a difference, whether by speaking up, showing support, or simply acknowledging someone's efforts. These small actions, though they may seem insignificant at the moment, have a lasting impact on those who receive them. In addition to the personal stories, I also noticed a pattern in many of the comments: widespread indignation toward racism and disrespect. This showed me that while there is still much work to be done, more and more people are willing to speak out against injustice. That sense of community, of unity in the face of wrongdoing, is something we must cultivate and encourage. Of course, not all the comments were positive. There were also some people who downplayed what happened or even defended Kevin's behavior, arguing that we all have bad days, or that maybe he was going through something difficult. While I firmly believe in showing empathy, I also think there's no excuse for behaving disrespectfully, let alone being racist. Empathy should never be used as a justification for tolerating hate. This week has been an eye-opening journey for me. It's shown me the power of sharing stories and the importance of standing up for what's right, no matter how small the act may seem. Each person who spoke up that day in the store played a part in showing that hate and discrimination won't be tolerated, and I hope that more of us continue to do the same. Thank you to everyone who took the time to share your thoughts and experiences. Your words have reinforced the idea that we're not alone in facing these challenges. Every story you shared reminded me that small actions can lead to significant change. Let's keep sharing, learning, and supporting one another. And if this story has left you with anything, I hope it's a reminder that our actions, no matter how small, have the power to change the narrative.
Update 4.
It has been 2 weeks since I shared what happened in that store, and honestly, I never imagined that something seemingly so simple could have such an impact. What started as a story about a bad day in a store line has grown into a larger conversation about respect, empathy, and how to confront everyday injustices. Today, I want to share with you what I consider a significant step forward that emerged from all of this. A few days ago, I received a call from the store manager, Jorge, the same one I spoke with after the incident to commend the cashier for his intervention. At first, I thought he was simply following standard customer service protocol, but what he told me pleasantly surprised me. Jorge explained that after our conversation and the impact the story had on social media, they decided to implement a formal training program for their staff on how to handle conflict situations and respond to discriminatory behavior. According to Jorge, the idea came after several employees read the post and the supportive comments it received. Many of them, including the cashier who was present that day, felt motivated to see that their actions did not go unnoticed. Jorge said they wanted to harness that positive energy to create a safer and more respectful work environment, both for employees and customers. The program, which will begin in the coming weeks, will include workshops on conflict resolution, effective communication, and how to handle sensitive situations professionally. It will also include specific modules on recognizing and responding to racism and other forms of discrimination. Jorge assured me that this initiative will not only benefit his team, but will also send a clear message to customers. The store will not tolerate disrespectful or discriminatory behavior under any circumstances. As I listened to all this, I couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and humility. Pride because a small action like sharing my experience had a real impact, and humility because this change wouldn't have been possible without the bravery of the cashier who acted that day and the support of all of you who read, commented, and shared the story. What excited me the most was learning that this program will also include feedback sessions, where employees can share their experiences and concerns directly with management. This will not only improve how conflicts are handled, but will also create a space where workers feel heard and valued. Jorge also told me that they had already held their first meeting to announce the program to the team, and the response was incredibly positive. He mentioned that many employees shared stories of similar incidents they had faced in the past, and that, while they didn't always know how to handle them, they now feel more prepared to act in the future. Of course, there is still much work to be done. This is just a small step on a much longer path, but I firmly believe that every step counts. What happened in that store shouldn't be normal, but it also shouldn't be ignored. Every time we speak out against hate and injustice, we are creating a safer and more respectful space for everyone. Thank you for being part of this journey. Let's continue to share, learn, and support each other as we work towards a more empathetic and just world.